Well, after this morning, Alabama fans have a new tight end to dream about for the coming season.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. Been in the fishing for a tight end. Caught one.
Got a big one. You've been fishing right over there over the Atlantic near Maryland. So, Jimmy, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen. Appreciate you guys so much. And I hope everybody's having a wonderful holiday season. I really do. I think it's going to be, let's make 2023 the best one yet. So, Jimmy, CJ Dippre, that's how you pronounce that, Dippre, has committed to the University of Alabama, a tight end that they also signed Ty Lockwood, obviously. Dippre, I wouldn't necessarily say he's was the most sought after tight end. I'm trying to look at a few stats here. I think he had 30 catches last year. Yeah, 30. He caught 30. He had 30 balls. He caught 30 balls. He caught 30 passes. There were so many ways. Yeah. He would be the most potent human being on the planet. He caught 30
Not very
balls.
fast.
That's really slowing him down. It's amazing he had that one hurdle against Ohio State this year. Anywho.
Put that guy out for the season.
He caught 30 passes for 339 yards and 3 touchdowns. He hauled in a season-high 49-yard touchdown against Michigan in September. Look, I like the pickup, okay? But I also looked at transfer portal ratings. He's not involved anywhere. That's okay with me. I'm fine with it because we need a tight end. And, I mean, the only other option that really was standing out was Eric Gilbert, who I want nothing to do with anymore. That used to be my most coveted recruit, by the way, and I want nothing to do with him now. So this guy looks like, who is helped me, the transfer from Georgia Tech on the 2009 team that helped us win a championship.
Colin Peak, who
was he had a stage name from his MTV days, which was like DJ Banana Head or something. I can't remember what it was.
That was it exactly.
Anyway, or like, CP Smooth or something. It's been a long time and I'm 50 now, so y'all bear with me. Dippre, he played obviously at a Power 5 school, played in the Big Ten, so he knows about good competition. Watching some of his film, he is athletic enough. He is not going to wow you. He's not huge like a Darnell Washington or something. He seems like a good tight end that can come in and play. And I think that's probably just what we were looking for. Yeah. Would you like it if Darnell Washington were in the transfer portal or Eric Gilbert, if he were, a little more stable? Sure. You would love it. You'd love to get him. But I think this is fine. Or an OJ Howard. This is fine. I'm not going to pretend like this is our biggest get, but this is fine.
He's a glue guy to me. To me, a glue guy is like not the star of the team, but someone absolutely necessary to win. And this is why. First of all, his numbers are pretty similar to Cam Latu's from this past season in terms of as a pass receiver. I think he proved he is, I'm going to use this word as a compliment, actually adequate as a pass receiver because he put up very similar numbers to Latu. And let's be honest, Latu was a really good pass receiver. He might have had a couple of drops here and there, but the NFL likes Latu a lot as a pass receiver. Latu is going to be a drafted player. Dippre is also very likely to be a future pro in the Latu sense. I think he's just really similar to Latu, but he's coming along at a great time, and this is why. Tight end can be done by committee, much like running back. And now Dippre was a missing puzzle piece. Now the puzzle looks sort of complete to me at tight end with Dippre, because Dippre is primarily a Y. Tight end is two positions. It's Y That's the position that lines up right next to a tackle. So the Y is like the 6th offensive lineman, right? You line up right there on the offensive line. That position is designated as the Y in football. We also flex our tight end quite a bit. We call that position H because that position often lines up in the slot. It often lines up behind the Y. It often lines up at fullback. So we use an H too. Well, we do have a good H. Robbie Oust, believe it or not, good H. And if you don't believe me, watch the Auburn game. He played the H spot great against Auburn. Early in the season, Oust struggled because we had some injuries at tight end and Oust had to play, right? Well, when Oust had to play, he played the Y because we didn't have anybody else at that time because Latu was hurt. So Oust played the Y and it was a struggle. But when you put Oust at the H, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. So now we've got a good Y in Dippre, a good H in Oust. Even better, Luke, we have a second Y that's really good at the line of scrimmage, Miles Kitselman. Great big guy, bigger than Dippre. And Kitselman will now have a year of experience, a year more in our weight room. He was an offensive lineman in high school. Kitselman's a really good second Y. And who's a second H? Actually, the guy that will eventually be the star of that tight end room, and that's Amari Nablack. Amari, the number 2 H behind Oust. Oust probably play the most snaps. But, hey, let's say it's 3rd and 8, and we're most likely going to throw it. Is Oust the guy that's going to be out there? Probably not. It'll probably be Nablack. So now we've got 2 Ys and 2 H's, and it completes kind of a puzzle. Now we can mix and match. When we need 2 tight ends, it's Dippre and Kitselman. When we need a regular, just a tight end and an H, it can be Dippre and Oust. And boy, we've really got some good blocking there. And both are legitimate pass catching options. And when it's 3rd and 8, and we want to use a tight end as a real pass catching threat, it's Amari Nablack time. So I like the committee. I like what we've built there. Yes, it would be better if we could just not have 4 and have 1 Brock Bowers. And when y'all locate the next Brock Bowers, please send an email to the Mal Moore building so they'll know where to find. Those guys are unicorns. They're hard to find one, and they will look for one in the next class, I'm sure. But if you can't have one superstar, then the next best thing is to get it done by committee. And I think with the addition of CJ Dippre, we now have an excellent committee at tight end that can really help the team win games.
You know, one thing that Alabama could do if looking for Brock Bowers, the next Brock Bowers, they could go to LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team and helps you find them faster. You need a tight end? Go to LinkedIn Jobs. You need a wide receiver? Go to LinkedIn Jobs. You need a new offensive coordinator position? Bill O'Brien? Go to LinkedIn Jobs. You can go there and add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you are hiring. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to find and to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions may, and they probably will, apply. All right, Jimmy. So one thing I wanted to talk about, you have a great post, by the way, on 3, and it's about Kansas State's season. Yep. And this is rather eye-opening because let's face it, on this program, on this podcast, on just about every other podcast, nobody's really given this game its due. This is a dang good game. It's a different game now that we know Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Jordan Battle, blah, blah, blah. They're all playing. It's a different game now. Now it's a game. Before it was a glorified spring practice. That's what I've been saying all along because we thought these were just going to be some Alabama kids, learning the ropes for next year. Now it's a game, boys. And so I think we need to approach it as such. By the way, this is apropos of nothing what I'm about to say. I saw somebody made a post. I'm not believing it. It could have been just some random dude who said he had some information that potentially Alabama is putting together an NIL deal. I say Alabama, I don't know who, for Bryce Young to stay one more year. I couldn't see that with a pair of binoculars looking through a telescope. But If that were to happen, Bryce Young would immediately become everybody's favorite Alabama player ever under every circumstance. And if he wasn't, I would force them to rethink their position. I don't think it'll happen, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just saw a post on it, which was fairly coherent and long. So if somebody was just lying about some BS, then, boy, they took a lot of time out of their holiday season to write that. But my gosh, I just had the thought, like, it hadn't even dawned on me Bryce would come back. But what if we did sort of get an NIL for him to come back? Don't elaborate on it, because I don't even want to go down this path and dream about it. I mean, it would be so heartwarming. It would be heartwarming enough that I think the Hallmark Channel would do a story on it. It'd be like, this Christmas, Bryce Young warms the hearts of every Crimson Tide fan. Anyway.
Well, I won't burst any bubbles there. I'll just point out that the NFL's allowed NIL deals for a long time.
Good point. All right. So you have a post about Kansas State season, and you just go down game by game. We don't need to necessarily go through every game, but we can take these two segments and talk about it a little bit. Kansas State opens up defeating South Dakota 34-0. Okay. Doesn't mean much. Then they beat Missouri 40-12. Now look, Missouri, that's nice. That was Missouri's opener. That's nice. It's an SEC team too. So while Missouri certainly wasn't at the top of the heap of the SEC, they went to a bowl game, and not every team in the SEC went to a bowl game. Kansas State loses by 7 to Tulane. Now, when it happened, we were like, there goes Kansas State season. Now both teams are in the New Year's Six Bowl. So.
Who had that game as like one of the premium non-conference games of the season, but it proves to be on a very short list of best non-conference matchups in 2022. Kansas State versus Tulane, and Tulane won, and I think I wrote simultaneously a low point of the season. But looking back on it, you're like, for a low point, that's not that bad.
It's not bad at all. Then they beat Oklahoma by 7, 41-34. Now, of course, we look back and say Oklahoma wasn't that good, especially not at that moment. But Kansas State doesn't get to beat Oklahoma very often. So, I mean, it's, I think that's a very solid, nice win. Then they beat Texas Tech 37-28. They beat Iowa 10-9. They lose.
Iowa State 10-9. I think that's an interesting score, because while that's an unimpressive – Iowa State wasn't good this year at all. So it's sort of an unimpressive 1-point win over an unimpressive team. But they held a Power 5 team to 9 points. I mean, so even when they didn't play well, but the defense did. I mean, that's a good performance.
Let me say this. I think the Iowa State 1-point win 10-9 looks worse than losing to Tulane 17-10.
But based on how the season played out, Yep.
Then they lose to TCU by 10. Now, Kansas State had an 18-point lead, 28-10, and TCU rattles off 28 straight points. I mean, obviously that kind of stuff happens, but I mean, frankly, they should have won that game. I mean, and TCU's in the playoffs, and by the way, they got revenge later on, which we'll get to.
Even bigger than that, Luke. And I'm going to have a whole post about that game probably tomorrow on the board. Everybody check that out on Wednesday. In that game, Kansas State's up 28-10. They're beating the crap out of playoff team TCU. Kansas State lost Adrian Martinez, their quarterback, in that game. So they had to replace him with Will Howard, who they lost by injury in that game. And they had to replace him with quarterback number 3, who was ineffective. And trying to score in the fourth quarter, they even went with quarterback number 4. They played 4 quarterbacks because their first 2 got hurt. I mean, that game, Luke, may have painted the playoff more than any other game all season. And again, Kansas State led it 28-10. They had TCU thoroughly beaten, and then their quarterback started dropping like flies, which allowed TCU to come back and win the game. If TCU had lost the game, they're not in the playoff. If Kansas State had won the game, maybe they're in the playoff as Big 12 champs, maybe. Or if not, they're in Alabama spot. Is Alabama in the playoff if Kansas State had won that game? That's that may have been the defining game that sort of completed the puzzle for the 2022 season. And it took a bizarre set of circumstances for Kansas State to blow it.
Then they just whip up on Oklahoma State. Now, again, Oklahoma State turned out to be not very good, when all was said and done, but you beat them 48-0. That's good. Now, here's the game that sort of sticks out. At least they beat Iowa State, right? 10-9. They lose to Texas 34-27. Now, of course, Texas gave Alabama everything they wanted, but this was coming off Kansas State's whipping of Oklahoma State. And what this tells me is Kansas State's just not the kind of program that can play its best one week and then, I know you're not going to play your best the next week, but get even moderate. I think they're going to have those swings. That's just kind of the mindset of that program. And they lose to Texas, and they frankly just shouldn't have done that. I mean, Texas really wasn't good enough to hang with them, much less beat them. And I'd say the same thing about Alabama, but we all know Alabama had its problems this year.
Love that take. Yeah, I love that take. Despite their Big 12 championship, Luke, I think that loss to Texas sort of tells us that Kansas State is a very good team. That's why they won 10 games and won the bit. They're very good, but they're not great. Right. A great team would have beat Texas that day. They're not great. I'll grant them a mulligan against Tulane because Tulane probably surprised them with how good they were. But that Texas loss to me is what Kansas State's a good team. You can't win 10 games and not be good, but they're not great.
Then they beat up on Baylor. So, again, sort of the swings, 31-3. Then they beat West Virginia 48-31, not a big deal. They beat Kansas 47-27. And as you say, that's probably their second best performance. I think that's true. And then, of course, they beat TCU in the championship game rematch. So, they've got some nice wins. I mean, the TCU is obviously their best one. But I don't think as a whole, as a country, we believe in TCU very much. So it's nice. It is nice. And it's certainly, it's a notch on the bedpost because you beat a playoff team. That counts. That means something.
They're the only team to beat a playoff team that is not in the playoff. Kansas State.
True.
Because two teams are undefeated, right? Georgia and Michigan are undefeated. Ohio State has a loss, but it's to Michigan.
Correct.
And loss is to Kansas State. So they're the only non-playoff team with a win over a playoff team. That makes an Alabama win, should it happen, hugely significant.
Yep, correct. All right, Jimmy, let me tell everybody about the NHSTA. That's their Drive Sober initiative. Look, you're hanging out with some friends and you're putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. We've all been there. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. But you live nearby, you can handle this. What are the odds you'll get pulled over? And even if you drive drunk, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance will go up. You could lose your license. You could lose your job. You could hurt somebody. You could hurt yourself, even kill yourself. Everyone knows the risks of drunk driving. The results are tragic and often deadly and even more often preventable. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there looking right now for impaired drivers on our roads. They're there to save lives. So if you think it's okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead and get a ride. There's too many rideshare services out there now. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, Jimmy, I'm going to take a detour here. Because, number one thing we love to do after an NFL Sunday is talk about Bama players in the NFL. And Bama players did well again. Derrick Henry had over 100 yards, but the Titans are falling apart at the seams. Jalen Waddle had a really nice touchdown pass from Tua Tagovailoa, by the way. Devontae Smith had 2 touchdowns on Saturday. He looked fantastic. The Eagles lost, but he looked great. Of course, Jalen Hurts didn't play. But what I really want to spend some time talking about here in this last segment is Tua Tagovailoa, because he's in concussion protocol again. And I remember the play, and of course everybody's shown the play again, but I remember the play very distinctly watching the game live. Like I was like, ooh, he hit his head really hard. Tua's just the kind of cat. Number one, he is kind of injury prone. I think it's fair to say that now. I mean, I used to get offended by it a little bit but I think he's number one. Tua doesn't know how to take a hit. Tua, when he was being tackled this particular time, his body sort of shifted and he landed almost purposely on the back of his head and it bounced off the ground. And I think he's got to learn I have to fall differently. Like that takes some coordination, that takes some dexterity, all those things. But he just doesn't have a sense of knowing how to take a hit. Like he doesn't know how to crumple correctly. I mean, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, these guys know how to take hits because they know, okay, I'm so valuable. Like I need to get down, when I need to, if I am falling, how I should fall. And I wonder if some of this can be attributed to, and again, this is me just throwing out a theory that maybe because of when he played in Hawaii, he probably wasn't hit that often, frankly. So maybe he just didn't learn it. Maybe it is a learned skill at a young age. Everything's easier when you learn it young. So maybe it's good for everybody to play behind a crappy offensive line for about a year just to learn, hey, I don't want to take many more hits like this, or when I'm falling, I need to turn myself in such a way that I don't hit my head. I'd rather hit my shoulder than hit my head, hit my elbow than hit my head. Especially a guy like Tua who has had several concussions now. And boy, I don't want him to be out this game. It's a big game. This coming up weekend, they're playing New England. Means a lot, and it's a shot for the playoffs. And you just hate to think that the Dolphins may not be able to get there. And look, here's the other thing. There was such a stark contrast to the way he played prior to that hit and how he played after that hit. I mean, it was like two different quarterbacks. And I'm just worried about him, man, because I'll tell you, I just gave my daughter yesterday, I gave my son a signed Jalen Hurts Eagles jersey. He's a huge Eagles fan. And my daughter just loves Alabama players. She loves Waddle and loves Tua, but she likes Dolphins too. So I gave her a signed Tua jersey for Christmas. And the first thought I had was, man, this is so cool. Like the two guys that are forever linked together because of the 2018, especially the SEC title game and the national championship game the year before. They're forever linked, like they both got their jerseys. But then I started getting sad about it. I was like, well, Hurts missed yesterday's game or the other day's game, and Tua's now out for God knows how long. Crap.
It's a rough sport.
It is a rough sport, man, but I'm just worried about Tua, and I'm not going to be a guy that's going to be like, hey, you should retire. I see a lot of that kind of stuff out there, but gosh, he's got to learn to do something here. And the Dolphins certainly need him. I would love it for the Dolphins. I mean, look, he made such a nice pass to Waddle. Of course, Waddle made a lot of it happen, but he was having a great day with Tyreek Hill, all these things. And it feels like it's coming apart for him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for him to hear because there will be famed, renowned neurologists that tell Tua, both to his face and on television, that he should retire from football. It may be too late, and that he will have this much higher degree of cognitive injury for the rest of his life already. And that's if he quit playing today. He's going to hear that from doctors, and that's going to be very difficult because I think we all assume that even hearing that, he's going to want to play. And some neurologists associated with football will eventually, again, clear him to play, and he probably will. And that's fine. That's a decision for Tua and not for any of us to make. It's for Tua to make, and whatever decision he makes should be supported by everyone, whether he plays or doesn't play. But if he does play, I'm with Luke. He's going to have to play differently, or maybe less. Maybe he should be the number two. Just play in case of emergency guy. I don't know. So much of the concussion stuff is difficult for all of us to understand. For instance, I get all of it. I get the dangers. I want to do what we can to protect these guys, while at the same time kind of keeping the core of the game that we've all loved so much. And gosh, so many of our friends, have played football at a high level, and most of them, if not 90+% of them seem fine, you know, but gosh, it's so scary. You don't want Tua to have issues down the line. So it is scary, pulling for him. What I hope and what I would ask all the fans, Alabama fans, Dolphins fans, football fans, is just be supportive of whatever decision is made. Hey, if he plays, that's great. Be careful, man. If you don't play, that's great. Appreciate all that you've shown us and all the exciting times and wins. You're one of the greats, even with a short career. So whatever he decides, I think everyone should support it either way.
All right, buddy, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will be back tomorrow. I feel like we'll be back tomorrow. Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. And then it's sort of, you know, we're going to try and be here as much as we can this week. We got a few things going on. Of course, New Year's coming in. It's always crazy and hectic around the holiday season. But, man, I'm going to say again, we appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for all the old listeners. Thanks for all the new listeners. You guys have made this so special and so much fun for Jimmy and me, and we truly do appreciate it. So until next time, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.